Dan, I can't speak for you, but I've had a very busy week, and I need a break.
I have not had that busy of a week, but I can always use a break. So I'm always looking for a break.
The phone's been ringing. I just went through 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 straight days of deliveries.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You need a vacation then. That's a lot of work for you. You need more than a break.
Yeah. And then like 3 restaurants in a row, 2 with the trailer. So my trailer's been busy, and something weird happens to me. I'm in business to sell firewood. I have my inventory, got my rows and rows of wood. And then when I sell one, it's hard to explain. I just wish that, now I have less wood to sell,
Yeah.
and that's like the objective of everything here, but it's just kind of a weird sensation I get.
I get the same feeling. It's almost like I am hoarding firewood and I don't want to get rid of it. Like I want to keep it. I want to collect it or something.
That might be the right mental illness.
Hoarding, yes.
Or I'm hoarding is what it is. I just have this emotional mental need to keep all of this around me, even though it's doing me no good. So I can turn it into a tangible asset that I can sell and pocket the cash.
Yes.
And then go buy more firewood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just something odd. I don't know. Maybe I need to see a psychologist, but I've always felt that firewood is the best psychologist you can buy.
I tend to agree. Being out in the wood yard, there's a lot of things a lot of therapy you can get there.
Yeah, good therapy.
Yeah.
And yes. I think that's probably why you never see a psychologist in the wood yard, is because he or she is not needed.
No.
I think I'm onto something here.
Typically not. At least you'd hope.
Yeah, but I know one thing that is needed, Dan. You need to read a comment left by one of our listeners.
Yes, we did get a little feedback after the last episode.
And I believe that all feedback should be accepted and embraced. Doesn't mean you agree with it, but we want to hear it.
Yes, and that is the one thing, I guess, just to set the table early on here, is that we're reading this is not in any way, we're not discouraging it. We're not trying to pick this apart. We're just taking it in. We're going to talk about it and give our thoughts.
Yep. Lay it on us.
All right. So the comment is from, and let me just pull it up here. I need to get prepared. All right, here we go. So Curtis sent us a comment regarding our last episode, and this is what he had to say. Guys, I love your podcast. I also subscribe to both of your channels. I look forward each week to listening to the podcast as well as watching both of your YouTube channels. Guys, I love both of you. My comments come from a sincere love for both of you and your desire for your podcast to be a continued success. But I
was told that anything that precedes the word "but" is a lie. I love this. Keep going.
Yeah. If you want your podcast to grow, it needs to have some structure that'll keep listeners interested and coming back. You can't just wander aimlessly and expect listeners to keep coming back. The podcast should be broken down into segments. On average, your podcast is about 30 minutes long. Here is a sample of what the segments might look like. Segment 1, opening comments, 3 minutes. Segment 2, featured topic for the week, 15 minutes. Segment 3, featured firewood wood species for the week. A brief discussion of the pros, cons, benefits, smells, how to identify, etc. Even include wood species that don't make good firewood as well as the reasons why. 5 minutes. Segment 4, Ask the Woodhound. This is a segment where you will respond to listeners' questions. Answering 1 or 2 questions per week is sufficient. 7 minutes. Segment 5, Strike Up the Band. A teaser of what's coming next week, followed by I Love Your Closing, followed by Strike Up the Band. Okay, the music. Guys, please come up with a new original closing. I love your closing to your channel. Dan, I love your closing to your channel. The Woodhounds podcast closing is hokey. You can do better. 1 minute for that. The total segments come in at around 30 minutes. I'm sure this will keep listeners interested and attract new listeners because they are going to learn something each week. Dan, Joe, I know you don't have a lot of time to devote to the podcast each week. You are both super busy, but a few minutes of preparation each week, mostly to decide what the featured topic is going to be and to pick the questions for Ask the Woodhound. The rest, you can probably just wing it. Wishing both of you continued success with the podcast and your YouTube channels.
All right. Well, Curtis, I genuinely want to thank you for the comment. I really mean it. And that just listening to this tells me a number of things. It tells me that you care, that you want us to do well. And honestly, for me, that's good enough for me. I've always felt that maybe I am an outlier here. I've always felt that we can be complete opposites and still be friends. And I don't care what your opinions are, who you voted for, who's your favorite sports team. It doesn't matter to me. So I genuinely appreciate that comment and the energy that it took to write it, and the fact that you cared enough to share that with us. And then saying all that, I just completely disagree with everything he said.
I will also agree with everything you just said. I appreciate the words. I appreciate the time, the effort, the thought that you put into sending that to us.
Yes. And I would also say too, I think really you could even say everything that Curtis said is correct. That is a recipe for success.
Yes,
it is.
It is. Yep.
And there are a lot of podcasts that are out there that do that. Not just podcasts, but like TV shows and radio shows. You know, there is a format. Like I used to watch these the U.S. Rifleman that Rifleman channel on like the Nashville Network. You know, it had the gear of the day, and then it would have like the gun that they were showing off, or just some club somewhere, and it was always broken down into these segments, and that was just their recipe. I just Dan and I had a lot of chuckling about this comment because it's Dan. The thing with me and you that continues to amaze me is, I've just met you now for a few years, and I mean, it's not like we mail each other Christmas cards or anything, but we are a lot alike.
Yes.
And someone that you don't know as well, you think, well, maybe Dan, this is what Dan really wants, or maybe Dan was thinking, well, maybe this is what Joe really wants. But here we both see it the exact same way. We want the exact opposite of what this recipe is. That's not us.
No, and that's what, when full disclosure, when we first got this comment, I had my thoughts. I wanted to hear Joe's thoughts, and then they mirrored mine as well. And it's just something that, again, I appreciate the thought. And yes, this is a recipe for a potential success if you were to be that type of person that needed a structured format to follow. But I am not that kind of guy. In my day job, I have multiple meetings a day, and we always have, our agendas. We have to stick to this agenda, and that's just not the mold that I fit in when it comes to something like creating content for social media, for this podcast. That's just not me.
Yeah. And I think that is some of the mental benefits that I have with my new lifestyle being self-employed. Was I had always felt that when I worked for the man, when I had a real job, I'm using my air quotes here, that I was a round peg and where I worked was a square hole. And I just didn't fit in. And it was always because my job was to execute their game plan, to follow their pattern, do it their way. And, I mean, they politely say this is that you're not paid to think and you're not paid to be creative. You are paid to execute our game plan. And then enter Ohio Woodburner, all of that changed. And even though I became a sole proprietor, self employed, I created this business out of nothing. I was still tempted to just study the way that everyone else was doing it and just do it their way because that's the safe way to do it. And I'm glad I didn't because if I had copied the majority of the other firewood businesses out there, I would spend all my time complaining that you can't make money selling firewood.
Yeah. And where would you be then? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
I'd just be one more on the list.
Yeah. And when we started this out, the podcast that is anyway, like our main thing we agreed on was we wanted to do it for fun. We
Yes.
didn't want it to be heavy. We didn't want it to be a lot of this, like the preparation work. We wanted it to be like, I think you said this, Joe. You said, let's make it to where it seems like there's two guys stacking wood and just shooting the breeze.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir there, Dan. That is exactly when we decided to go forward with the podcast. And that, we were like, what the heck are we going to talk about? And it was really just, and that's how we do our podcast. Every episode that you've seen, we sit and we'll think, well, Dan, what should we talk about? And you go, I don't know. And I say, I don't know either. And then we think, well, what do we talk about? Chainsaws. Well, we already did that. And then we just come up with a topic. Dan hits record and we go. And that was what we wanted to give off, that element of just two people stacking wood, because two people that if you're stacking wood with a stranger, you're going to be friends by the time you're done. And that was what we were shooting for with the Woodhounds podcast. We didn't want it to have a rigid structure because then we both agree. That's where I'm saying Dan and I are both alike like this. It wouldn't be fun, and if it wasn't fun, we weren't going to do it.
Right. And we're not saying that, we just haphazardly throw stuff together. I mean, we do a little preparation. We do, it's not like we don't have somewhat of a, I guess, agenda or a format we follow, but I just didn't think that having a, rigid structured format would be the way that we could enjoy doing it. Because
Yeah.
yes, it would take, preparation. There's all these things. Now, I'm not saying that if we did that, we wouldn't possibly maybe have more success. I don't know. But when I look at our numbers and I look at averages of other podcasts out there across the entire world, we are outperforming a lot of the expected averages of all other podcasts. So,
Yeah.
what we're doing is working. And I think that's what makes it unique. And that's what I always wanted, is something that's not the same as like a structured show that you tune into, you hear a segment, the next segment, the next segment. Like that's, like I said, that's just not the mold that I fit into.
Yeah, and we had both said too that if that was the recipe that we had to follow, then we just weren't even going to do it. We weren't going to do it at
Right.
all. And I see elements of this attitude of my own in Ohio Woodburner, and I get grief, from all of the I call them the YouTube accountants that are out there, that are like, Joe, what is your, they want data, they want numbers, they want to know the true cost of owning a firewood processor, and I'm not going to give it to you because I don't have it. Because I've always said that if you can balance a checkbook, you can run a business. And I keep everything at a practical level. I am a corporate rebel right now, and I had done that for 22 plus years, and it's not fun for me. Running the business, operating and selling is fun, and that's what I do, and that's the way I do it. And if I if there was like some law that required you to follow a prescribed pattern to run your business, I wouldn't have done it because it wouldn't have been me. It wouldn't have been fun. And I think that's what this podcast is. And that's what I like about it is that there really is no structure. And sometimes it is just mindless babble. And there's nothing wrong with mindless babble. It's just the way the majority of us live. Have
Yeah,
you ever
it's
been
who
on a
we
long
are.
car?
Yeah,
Yeah, if you've
yeah,
been on a long car ride with a friend, what are you talking about?
yeah,
You probably don't even know. It's just mindless babble.
yeah. And
Yeah.
again, Curtis, I'm hoping this isn't coming across as we're just taking your feedback and being negative about it. I'm not that type of person either. I don't like just ripping
Yeah.
things apart that I don't agree with. It's just, this is something that I see your point. It's very valid, but that's not the way that I
Yeah.
think it will work for us.
And I get comments, they're few and far between, but you get them like on our YouTube channels, like, I had a guy that didn't like me doing shorts, and
Yeah.
I was like, well, guess what? I like doing them. So that's good enough for me. And, it's just a personal choice. It's how we do things, and it's just what makes us special. It makes us different. And I think too that we fall into this rut. And I've done videos about this, explaining about if you are going to take the effort to do something, to create something, a business, or in this case, a podcast, just don't copy what everyone else is doing. Be different, be exceptional. Don't be afraid to get outside of the box and take a risk on something and just let it be you. And, if your gauge is how well you're received, then so be it. But if it isn't, then just do what you want to do
Yeah.
and have fun with it. And that's what, to me, starting a business, starting this podcast, it's just who I am. And, if someone, like Dad always says, you never walk into a man's house and tell him how to live. But in this case here, you have people that are invested with us, that do care
Right.
about us, and they do want to see us do well. But it's kind of like some of the struggles that we have with our children. We know what from our vantage point, we know what they can do to be successful. But really, it's got to be their choice, and you got to be good with it and let them figure it out on their own. And I think that's what Dan and Joe are doing right now with the podcast.
We are trying. We are making an attempt. We definitely are. We're trying to figure
Yeah.
things out. And on the flip side, you could probably find someone out there saying that they completely enjoy this unscripted, unformatted show. So, there's always those, you always have to weigh those different opinions. And I think that's where, if you can stick to your guns and be true to yourself, that's where you get the most success. Falling into the rut of trying to do what others want you to do, that's where you're not original, you're not unique, and you're just not yourself.
Yeah, be yourself. I can't help but think, Dan, that there is someone in this world who at once upon a time told Cindy Crawford that she needs to have that mole removed if she wants to be serious. If she wants to be successful as a supermodel, she needs to have that mole removed from her face. I guarantee you that there's someone out there that told her to do that because
Right.
she's different. That would be different. None of the other supermodels have, well, I guess if you're pretty, they're beauty marks. So
Yes.
for guys like you and me, they're moles. You don't see other supermodels out there that have a mole like that. And I guarantee you I bet you she was under pressure when she was younger to have plastic surgery done. And she didn't,
Yep.
I bet you like the Liberty Bell, they were probably saying, we need to throw this bell away. It's got a big crack in it.
Yeah. It's knowing who you are and sticking to that. Like I had just the other day, one of my customers who brings his trailer over, he picked it up full of wood. He was super, thrilled about how great it looked. And then he said to me, he said, well, where else do you advertise? Like, do you have other, I'm like, I don't really advertise because I don't want to get too busy because, I'm just a hobbyist. And I don't want to make it a chore. I don't want to make it work. I don't want to I want to enjoy what I'm doing. And that's the same thing with the podcast right here. I don't want this to become a chore to where, we have an episode where we're going to record, and now the night before we don't have our segments laid out and we don't have the time frames put in of how long we're talking about this and that,
Yeah.
too much.
But some people live for that, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Some
Yeah.
people that fits, and that's who they are. And that's
Right.
where I think,
I just had this discussion on a delivery. I was talking with the lady, very nice lady. And she said, how's your wood supply for going into the fall? And I said, that's pretty good. I said, but, I look at it and I think, gosh, I wish I had like 10 times more. But I think back upon my summer and, I'm not going to work in the heat. We went on a number of like short family excursions and I'm good with it, so
Yep.
I've made what I could make and I'm happy with that. It's good enough for me. I'm not, then you hear like there are people that are out there, that are just hard chargers. And I'm sure that if they took over my responsibilities with a high wood burner, it would probably be a multi-state franchised, mega conglomerate that's just redefined the firewood delivery service industry. But it's Joe here, and I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at, and I know what I'm not even going to do. And I'm just good with it, And I think that's what our podcast, and that's scary, Dan. Me and you are we're in alignment with this kind of a situation here.
Right. And having, I guess, both the flexibility of like the show itself, but then even like when it comes down to like I know a lot of people have asked like why we don't have more guests on, and it's tough because we don't really have a set like even recording schedule. Like we just figure out what's going to work and we go with it. So
Yeah.
it's not, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or that it wouldn't work or that any point of Curtis's comment is wrong or bad. It's just,
right.
Again, it's just a way that we've kind of grown into this, and I think it's doing good. I think I'm fine with everything.
Yeah, I listen to us on Spotify. And when you're on Spotify, when you're looking at the episode, if you swipe to the left, it brings up related type podcasts. So like, you swipe left, there'll be like gardening or, just outdoor kind of stuff. And when I gauge how popular those podcasts are by how many reviews that they've had, and some of them look to be well produced. They got a real nice thumbnail and a lot of stuff in their notes, but then they have like 12 reviews,
Yeah.
and then all of the ones that I see that are in our niche. Yeah, we need a musical tone for that word. Ugh. Yeah. Ours is bigger, and I'll take it. And beyond all that, serious, Dan, I think if we had if we had 3 listeners, which would mean there's you, me, and then some other stranger out there that enjoys bad podcasts, I would be happy with that because it's just fun for me and you to just sit down here and just shoot the breeze.
Right. Yep. Just get together, talk about what's going on. And, if somewhere along the line we are approached or we do grow and we need a format for something, let's say we were approached to have our show syndicated or something. And they said, in order to do this, you need to follow this this is your format for your 30-minute show. If that was the case and there was like a contract on the table, I don't know if I'd sign it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And then they would say, well, this gives you the rights to drive the company Maserati. I would say, okay.
And then the Woodhounds would be the Woodhound, Joe. The show would be a solo show.
Yeah, sponsored by Maserati.
Yeah. No, I'm just, I'm just being a little over the top here. But again, it's just, I just strongly believe in. I've always done that. Just like I want to be genuine. I want to come across as genuine and authentic. And I think to do that, you just got to be yourself.
Yeah, I had always been told if you want to be successful, they'd say just be yourself, and I would say, yeah, but that's what I've been doing.
That's what got
You
me
just
here.
don't. Yeah, you just don't understand. Joe, why are you in the poorhouse? I was like, I was just being myself.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, so there was one other thing too, and we need to discuss this, Dan. Uh, I think our outro is awesome. It's not hokey. It's not hokey. I think, and call it whatever you want. I call it awesome.
I have a couple thoughts on that. It is again unique because it combines both of our closings kind of together.
Uh
And the other thing is um, I don't really know how many people are listening at that point anyway. So,
huh.
well, Curtis is listening. Curtis is
Yeah,
listening.
Curtis is.
But I don't
We know at
know if
least
anyone
one
else is.
person's made it to the end. Yeah. All right. So if it's hokey, then good. I like hokey. Hokey is good. We're the
Yeah,
Virginia Tech Hokies here. Yeah.
there you go. See, and,
Uh
and
huh.
here's another just quick point. If we would have, I mean, this has been a good little discussion, I think, about all of
Yeah.
stuff kind of related. If we would have been in a structured format, we would have moved on about 25 minutes ago. So we wouldn't
Yeah.
have
We
had
wouldn't
to
been able to.
have this discussion.
The species of the day is elm.
What do you have to say for that? I don't like it, but I'll take it if it's free and it burns, so it's good.
Yeah. Uh huh.
No, no. Just we're just having fun there, having some fun, and that's the other
Yeah.
thing, Curtis. Don't take this as us ripping on your comment, and don't be afraid to send us comments if you're not Curtis and you're thinking, oh boy, I ain't gonna send them any feedback now. Jeepers, they just picked them apart on their episode.
Yeah. I. So there, we could be accused of not uh, not listening to or not being open to constructive criticism because we're just saying right now we're just going to do it like this and it's just the way it is. I don't know if I were at work, then the boss man comes in and says, Joe, you got to be a better team player. I don't know, is that kind of different than something that's creative? Did someone go up to Salvador Dali and say, "Yeah, you should probably try use straight lines or little
Yeah,
make your
right. Yep.
make your paintings look like a house instead of a slug trail or something." I don't know. And that's where I think things just veer off to a different dimension. It's that this is a creative expression. You know.
Right. And there is, it's not to say that there might be a future episode where we do have somewhat of a format where we do have a segment that we move on to another segment and answer a question or talk about a species. But I think that's the beauty of having the format we have is that we can do that. We can take this feedback and we can apply it if the time in the, you know, episode
Sure.
fits.
Yeah, and that's one thing I felt. One of my strengths is I will change in 2 seconds if I feel that it's necessary. I'm not one of these rigid thinkers, and I got my opinions, and that's it, and they're never going to change. And I look at data, I make conclusions, and I go. And if the data changes, well, then what the heck, I would change too. But I think the bottom line, though, in an enterprise like this, just like the YouTube channel, it's got to be fun. The day that putting up videos on Monday and Wednesday become a grind, I just won't do it anymore. That's just the way I am. Same thing with the podcast, And Dan and I had talked about this too. If it's not fun, we're not going to do it.
Yep. And
Mm-hmm.
we're not gonna start getting into, like you said, the grind of trying to chase analytics and chase downloads and chase views just to try to justify, doing this. Like that.
Yeah, and that I think that is a natural evolution. I think that anyone who has a YouTube channel that starts to become successful, I think once you get that first taste of success, you start looking at your data, your numbers. Then you start thinking, well, if I put this on Thursday instead of Wednesday, or if I make it go live at noon instead of in the morning, or if I, go with this company here that will make thumbnails for me. It's just like in baseball, you just go down that rabbit hole of like sabermetrics, where you just get just so deep into the data that you just can't enjoy the game anymore. And I got a quick taste of that, but I'm not a numbers person. And then I just finally said the heck with it. I'm just going to put up videos that I enjoy doing, and so be it.
Yep.
And then
Analysis paralysis.
yeah. And now the podcast is it's just two guys stacking wood and we're shooting a breeze. Dan, you remember we even discussed having a noise in the background of wood being stacked.
Yeah.
The wood tumbling down the trailer, and then the click of it, being stacked on top of each other, just to give that appearance of, these are just two people just stacking wood and shooting a breeze.
Right. Maybe we'll have to throw that in. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I agree. You
Yeah.
just got to stick with what stick with what you've been doing, stick with what you know, stick with what you do. It's like when you go to the prom, you're always going to see another girl in a prettier dress, but you got to dance with the one that you brought. There you go.
Yeah. I like that analogy. We'll go with it.
We'll go with it. We're sticking with it. We're dancing with the girl we brought right here.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Well, Dan, I want to thank Curtis for the feedback.
Yes.
And I'm serious. I really do believe that, he is on to something. And, that's what I'm just saying, is that we just disagree and we can still be friends.
Right. And I will look for a week from this. When this episode airs, I will look for the next week to be one download less. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe Curtis will come back and listen again, but hopefully he will, because Curtis, again, nothing dogging on your feedback, just telling you like it is.
Well, here's what's nice about Curtis, though. Curtis didn't say, if you don't do what I am saying, I am leaving.
Yeah.
He never said that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why I appreciate what he had said. And I think that he's genuine. I mean, he is genuine about it. He's adult about it. He's not holding us ransom,
Right.
or blackmailing us, that we got to follow and do what he says or else. So I like Curtis.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I don't think his feelings are going to be hurt. I hope not anyway. I hope he's not one of those people. But all right. So with that,
all right. Yeah.
Let's move on to the closing segment of Striking Up the Band.
But first, the species of the day is the elm tree.
No, that was the earlier species. You got it.
Yeah. All right. So, Dan, what do you say we strike up the band?
Yes, it is time.
For 30 seconds.
Strike it up, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in and making the Woodhounds the #1 firewood podcast in the world.
Yeah, and I want to tell everyone out there, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making us the best and #1 firewood podcast in the world. And I want to tell everyone to don't be
hokey.
Try not to be
hokey.
And do the hokey
pokey.
and turn.
I have no idea where you're going with this.
You're supposed
just
to say
have a great day.
You're supposed to say and turn yourself around. Don't do that. Okay, let's start all over again. Okay, you ready?
All right. Wait,
Edit.
is this like for real, or are we going to leave that in? I'm leaving it in.
Okay.
So just
Yeah, let's leave it in. The heck with this editing. I think it's super hokey, but I love it. All right, and have
a great day.